the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation, with your hosts Kylor Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Lawrence Smith.
FCS Fans Nation. Welcome to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Matt Frazee, your unbiased Biznabin, coming at you. There are four of us on the podcast this week. Jamie Williams, our Duke dog, Chris Hammond, Tubbs at the club, and Kylor Neal. Gentlemen, welcome to the quarterfinals. Jamie, Chris, I'm sure you're doing fine. As Jamie, you had a victory. Chris, you had some bets that you made maybe a little bit of money on this week. But Kylor, I know maybe you're feeling a little down right now, so I do have a question to start the pod. How was Mortal Kombat, my friend? Was it worth the watch or what?
I mean, no and yes. If you have high expectations for it, which I don't know anyone who has high expectations for the movie, then I would not watch it. If you have low expectations coming into the movie like I did, yeah, it's a good, couple hours of nothing else to do. Might as well watch it. It wasn't that bad.
There you go.
It wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad.
It was worth a few hours of some time wasters. I wanted to throw you off there a little bit because in terms of expectations, we had some expectations for the first round, and that's going to be kind of the majority of our theme tonight to see if our expectations met reality. So we are entering the quarterfinals, gentlemen. Once again, a reminder, if you're new to this podcast, our questions and everything discussed here on the podcast is by our members on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter page. They guide what we do here. And we are going to kick it off right away, guys, with Jeremiah Rash. Congratulations, golf clap. Jeremiah is a big SIU Salukis fan, and he wants to know, I know SIU took a lot of heat about being deserving of making the playoffs. Did they just prove why they should have, and did the committee get it right all along in this weird spring season? And he understands that he thinks his Salukis will get crushed at South Dakota State. We'll see about with some predictions at the end if that's true, Jeremiah. But I'm going to start with you, Kylor, because everyone was praising you, and they were really like, yes, Kylor brought the heat, finally talking about how the Missouri Valley did not deserve 5 teams. So what do you think about SIU, and did the committee get it right in terms of how it looks right now?
I mean, I am going to exactly back what I said last podcast, because I even said the Missouri Valley has a good chance to go 4-1. So even though I said, the Missouri Valley didn't deserve 5 teams, I don't think they really deserve 4. I think matchups play a part. And I thought, just like I said last podcast, SIU has a good stylistic matchup versus Weber. The only thing that made me choose Weber in a close game was I said, just because they're at Ogden. If they weren't in Ogden, I was like, I think I would take SIU, 60% of the time, or something close to that. I said around the podcast. So I still think Missouri State, they finally played 2 of the top 3 teams, and they got shut out by both of them. They did not deserve to be in the playoffs. That was, the one team, and I still don't think SIU deserved to be in the playoffs with 3 losses. But like I said on the last podcast, SIU still probably one of the best 16 teams in the country. They'll still have a good chance, to win the first round just because of the matchup style. But no, I'm going to stand by what I said. And just like even I read a comment from Chase Kitty, I don't think you should take in just a 1 game in the playoffs as a see, told you so, because you never know what's going to go in the playoffs. You get the best games every single week. The CAA has had a little bit of trouble to where, what was it? Duquesne or someone beat a couple CAA teams a few years ago. But if you matched up Duquesne with Villanova 10 times, do you really think Duquesne wins more than half of the times? I mean, anything can happen in the playoffs, but I still don't think SIU, Missouri State deserve to be in, but hey, they're taking advantage for getting in. You do what you got to do.
Chris, you had made on some mentions on Twitter that maybe you were had to own some things or eat some crow. Tell us a little bit about that mentality and how you're feeling after seeing that first round play out. Did the committee get it right? Did they get it wrong? Or are we yet to figure it out right now?
I'm still kind of a Kylor on this. I don't think 5 teams should have been. Missouri State proved it. I mean, they got beat bad. I was on the Weber State Weekly show, the Sunday of Selection Sunday, and we did what Kylor touched on again. I'm just like, we're making Kylor feel like the smartest man in the room today, which he always is. But I was like, I just think you guys were set up in a very unfavorable quadrant of the bracket. SIU, I think SIU, North Dakota, and South Dakota State were the teams that were best set to like beat Weber State, and that's what happened. Like Kylor said, I still think Weber was probably a better team than SIU, but they weren't on Saturday, and Weber's out. I think what we probably should have done is find a way to have North Dakota versus SIU if they wanted to give 4 teams in, and then had that Missouri State bid gone somewhere else like East Tennessee or another team kind of deserving. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, they won and they look good without, I believe, their star running back too, which that actually is a bit of a shocker, is the fact that without the guy who I thought was going to give Weber the most problems, they still pulled it off. So it goes to show that they are stylistically a matchup nightmare for a team like Weber, who I think Jay Hill said it in his thing. They played with fire too many times this year. The cardiac cats. Nobody actually wants to be the cardiac anything. Like, it's fun for like 2 games, but man, especially when you get into the playoffs, it's not fun. So the Missouri Valley looks strong, other than Missouri State. But maybe North Dakota is just that strong. At one point, we all thought they were consensus consideration for number 1 team in the country. So all in all, I will admit that Southern Illinois probably should have been picked. That is there, but I still think she probably should have been 4, and Missouri State should not have gotten in. And then you match up those 2 Missouri Valley teams as like a play-in game. But at the end of the day, I'm not the committee, and that's not what happened. And Southern Illinois can use this as bulletin board material and take it to SDSU. But, I mean, I'm still not a believer in the Salukis as somebody who actually really likes the Salukis. They also, I mean, they get South Dakota State, which just kind of sucks. But big win for them. I'm still not on board with the Missouri Valley 5 bids. But props to them. They get a clap back at a lot of people this week.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people around the country were like, okay, 4 I can understand, 5, just that something about that additional team drove people mad. 4 they could have justified. SIU could have been like your last team in almost, and we could have seen justification. But Missouri State's resume just didn't match the idea they should have been a playoff team. And Jamie, I kind of want to get your thoughts a little bit moving into the next topic, because I think it's really kind of conducive in terms of what happened with James Madison. This last weekend, they got the win, which is all that matters. Win every game by 1 point for the next 4 games, and you raise the trophy, no different than blowing everybody out. But Joshua Hoffman, an awesome South Dakota State fan, wants to know, is the lack of non-conference games the reason why some games were closer than expected, and can this trend continue? So the Dukes, most people had them picked to win, which they did, but the game was much closer than anticipated. So do you think that lack of non-conference and weeks off may have affected things? What do you think there, Duke Williams?
No, I don't think the non-conference really affected that, because, I mean, think about it. We wouldn't have played VMI during the season anyway. Eastern Washington wouldn't have played North Dakota State. So those matchups wouldn't have happened. Yeah, maybe you test yourself against more difficult competition in a normal fall season. But I don't think the non-conference did. I don't even think the starts and stops did. And it's just everybody's good right now. I mean, there were very few blowouts. Jacksonville State just handled their business. South Dakota State handled their business. Eventually, North Dakota State just wound up running over a very young defense by Eastern Washington. And then when you look at the JMU game, yeah, what people are seeing is, oh crap, that was a 7-point game. Sorry, Chris, I know I was a little premature trying to figure out what you bet it down to at 14.5 versus us being up 14.
I know.
But that game, to me, because I watched every play, was really never in hand after the first quarter. Because once Jawan Hampton broke the 99-yard touchdown run, and we were up 21-3, what the problem is the Dukes backed off and VMI didn't, and put themselves back in the game, gave themselves a chance, made a couple of mistakes more than they needed to. But it didn't really feel like they were ever really going to crest that hill and take the lead and challenge to tie the game. So it was a lot of, I don't want to say garbage time, because it was still a 2-score game. You get in there, anything can happen. But I think, games like that survive and advance. Sam Houston survive and advance. They had 4th and goal for Monmouth, and they come up with an interception. Survive and advance. That's really all that matters right now. Style points don't count.
There you go.
Can I add something, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Here's also something that I think you have to look at. All right, VMI. They're not far away from JMU. In the FCS landscape, who do you think VMI hears about all the time, even though they're not in the same conference and don't play each other? JMU, the power of the FCS, the power of Virginia. JMU. Do you not think VMI probably got a little bit hyped up for this game? I know in-state games, even though it's not a true rivalry, when one person is at the top and you have been historically at the bottom, you are going to play with an extra dose of fire. And, JMU hasn't looked overall dominant the whole season. They have struggled in some games. They've won they look like JMU in other games. They have looked like all three different types of JMU from what we'll see. But VMI is better than everyone gave credit for. But also they got up for JMU. They were able to slow JMU down. But yeah, I mean, if you don't think in-state games when one team's at the top and one's at the bottom for a long time, one team gets a little more hyped up, I would, I'd argue and say, that's probably not going to happen. One team is definitely getting fired up for that game.
And also, don't forget, a lot of these guys for both those teams played with and against each other in high school, so there's extra motivation. Same thing happened with Elon. They get up to play Signetti. So, yeah, I mean, we can make excuses for JMU. I don't think they're making excuses, but, I mean, VMI played their butts off. Jacob Harris is a stud.
Yeah.
Point blank a stud. Seth Morgan is a freshman. That team's not going anywhere, but they were just the better team won yesterday, and I look for big things for VMI in the fall.
Yeah. I agree with Jamie in the sense of like that game. This has been my problem with JMU all year, and it's could be a whole podcast on its own. Flow Sports. I'm not paying money for that. So I haven't really gotten to watch James Madison. I've seen highlight tapes when I was doing the overtime and box scores. And it's been coined on this podcast. I like the eye test. I actually got to watch James Madison for the first time this year. And when you see it in person, and if you actually watch that game and don't just look at the box score, you basically realize what Jamie said. Like, the game never felt out of hand. Yes, the spread was 14.5, and they only won by 7. But it was so much just like VMI, just like kind of keep chipping away. But it just, I don't know. It felt like, I don't know, James Madison was just being, I don't want to say bully, but the big guy and the little guy is just, trying to swing, and he's just kind of got his arm on his head so he can't reach. That's what it felt like watching. James Madison definitely controlled that entire game. But VMI definitely came out with fire and fight, and like kind of what Kylor said, man, this is the Chris Agrees with Kylor show. That's just probably one of those games VMI gets up for. Not that you need any extra motivation in the playoffs, but yeah, that's an in-state thing, whether it's a rivalry or not. It's when you play teams in-state, it can get the little team that doesn't get as much acknowledgement and stuff. It's a bigger game for them.
No doubt. And nobody would have called VMI success. Oh, wait, except for Jamie Williams. Well done on that one, man. And a heck of a year for VMI. They did a great job. So right back to you, Jamie. Kia Wilson, awesome Dukes fan, wants to know, are penalties the only weakness of James Madison as a team? Ooh, this will be an interesting take because I think people have taken some sticks and stones and thrown them at James Madison in other areas. Is it just penalties and discipline? Besides that, is the team rounded? What do you think, man?
No, it's more than the penalties, and I would not advise anybody to boil it down to that. Sure, they took within a two-drive series, they took 3 15-yard penalties. Questionable or not, we can discuss that later, but they were called, and you have to rebound from them. The problem still was the quarterback play. Cole wasn't good, and they didn't play JMU offense yesterday. Why? They just, for 5 or 6 straight first down plays, they tried to throw the deep ball. That is not how James Madison's offense operates. It is a run to set up the pass. And I'm sure they saw something in their pre-scout that said, look, attack these corners deep. And they did hit a couple eventually, but they kept VMI in that game by going with a different game plan than what James Madison does. Why do you have to adjust when you're the big dog? Don't adjust, play your game. And that was the problem. And then in the second half, they pedaled back, and VMI never stopped playing. And it was really frustrating to watch JMU just let them hang around, because when you let a team hang around, eventually you get caught. It happened to
Weber State.
Weber. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It happened to Weber. And I think I might have said it in our little text group that we were from. It's a cheap lesson to learn because you win by one. It's all that matters. But hopefully they take this. They look at this second half and say, guys, you have to play like you did in the first half every single play the rest of the way. North Dakota's not a pushover. Sam Houston, North Dakota State's not a pushover. Jacksonville State, Delaware, Southern Illinois, South Dakota State, not a pushover. Notice I didn't exclude anybody there yet. So JMU has to keep their discipline, yes, without the penalties, but they have to also keep their game plan, keep their intensity, and then let's see what happens from there when they play 60 minutes and not 30 to 35.
Yeah, I like how you kept everybody involved. It keeps our predictions at the end of this podcast under lock and key. Good stuff. Kylor, you are our Texas resident, so this one I'm going to throw your way, my man. Cody Werlinger wants to know, will North Dakota State's run game be the kryptonite for Sam Houston again, like it has been in the previous playoff matchups? And also, will the Texas heat be a factor in the game? I believe I saw, looking at a little bit of overcast, but just slightly at 80 degrees for that game next week. So we'll see how that plays out. What do you think, my man? You're in the Texas weather. You're down there by Sam Houston. How's that play out for Sam Houston and NDSU?
Well, the good thing is it's not, super in the summer yet where it's going to be really hot and really humid. I was out today, doing 5-6 hours of yard work and felt good. Barely sweat,
get it.
It is perfect weather right now for a game. I don't think weather is going to be too much of a factor for NDSU, especially because they play in the same weather that's going to be there next week. They played in 75 degrees or whatever it is in the dome. It's nothing different. But what was the first part? Can Sam Houston stop the run offense?
Basically, well, Sam Houston traditionally, not all the way back to 2012-11, the last couple matchups, NDSU's just ran goal line offense at some point in the second half and just ran up the middle. Will that kind of play out again? Do you see it?
Well, for one, I think Sam Houston has a much better defense than Eastern Washington overall as well. And we saw what NDSU was able to do versus Eastern Washington. I don't think they'll have that same type of success for Sam Houston, but Sam Houston hasn't played a team as physical as NDSU all year. So this is one of those coin flip in terms of, is NDSU's offense going to be able to do what they typically do, or is NDSU's or SDS Sam Houston? Wow, can't even say it. Sam Houston, is their defense actually improved compared to what we've all been saying on the podcast all year? Is their defense more aligned with the 2011-2012 team, or are they more aligned with the 2016? That is yet to be seen versus one of the powers, but I think Sam Houston's defense is overall improved. But yeah, I mean, NDSU's running offense can potentially take advantage of Sam Houston. We'll just have to see it. I don't know either way. But yeah, we'll see.
I think an X factor in that is how many opportunities Cam Miller, which now he's brought an NDSU passing offense at least back to some sort of respectable light. How many opportunities he's going to get against a passing defense, which is ranked, I think it's at least bottom 5 in the FCS. Now, is that a factor of playing Southland teams where all they do is pass, and that's just a nature of the beast, or are they actually a secondary that struggles? Because if you're going to stack 8 in the box and your secondary struggles quite a bit, well, play action and other things start to open up. So I think a lot of people are just going to say Sam Houston has to stop the run, but that secondary play I think is going to be pretty big in terms of NDSU and Sam Houston. I'd like to get more in detail into this right now, guys, but we have some follow-up questions which will guide that discussion in a bit. So, Chris, man, you are unfortunately, your squad wasn't able to make the playoffs, but we won't hold it against you. And I think this is a great question for you since you are the most unbiased perspective for this. Kevin Geeter, an awesome Jacksonville State fan. Thanks for the question, Kevin. Out of all the seeds, which do you see being the most likely to get upset this round as all 4 seeds have advanced? South Dakota State, Jacksonville State, James Madison, or Sam Houston? All right, Tubbs at the club. What do you think, man?
Yikes.
This is a tough one because the matchups are all really good.
Yeah, it's like Jacksonville State, it would be very on brand after just absolutely, pummeling their way through the first round to just absolutely slip up here in the second round. That being said, I mean, I've also South Dakota State, Southern Illinois, we already saw that matchup. It's probably Sam Houston and James Madison. Like I said, like we were talking North Dakota at the beginning of the year, like they looked good, could possibly be a number one team. James Madison's kind of doing the play with fire thing, but not really. I don't want to get too far into it, but yeah,
Chris,
if a team was most likely to lose, probably Sam Houston or James Madison.
Chris, I'll hook you up, man. My coworker does this awesome thing. You pick 3, I pick 1. Hey, we want to go out to eat. You pick 3, I pick 1. I'm like, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. Tells you a lot about my diet. And she goes, oh yeah, let's do Pizza Hut.
I love that.
So you pick JMU and Sam Houston. Kylor, split the difference. Chris picked 2, you pick 1. Out of JMU and Sam Houston, who's likely to get upset?
I mean, can we all just give a little bit of a heartfelt sympathy for Sam Houston State? As a 2 seed, they got screwed the most out of everyone.
Oh,
for
sure.
They had the toughest matchup in terms of any of the seeded plays. I think Monmouth was by far the best team out of Davidson, Holy Cross, and VMI. And then they also have the toughest quadrant. They have, as NDSU, who we already know what NDSU is in the playoffs all decade. We've seen them. And then if they win that somehow, now they got to potentially play JMU, who is also JMU in the last 5 years. I mean, Sam Houston State got absolutely screwed for being a 2 seed. I feel bad for them. Yeah. If you're looking at who has the most potential chance, I think it's either Jacksonville State, just because of Delaware being really good, but Jacksonville State looked really good last week against a weaker team, and I think Jacksonville State has a good chance to beat Delaware. So I'm going to say Sam Houston, even though I'm more 50-50 along with this game, out of all of them, I think they have the most chance to get upset. I mean, it's just looking at the matchups. Which one are you going to bet on? I'm not betting on any of the other ones. I would probably bet on NDSU over anyone else.
Yeah, I think NDSU may be a big factor there. But James Madison was called out there a little bit as a possibility for an upset, and William M. Lip does want to know. First, he said UND looked like they bounced back, no rust against Missouri State, and JMU looked a little again. So he wants to know, Jamie, do the Hawks win by 60 or 70 points over the Dukes? What do you think, man? You have 2 options. It's 60 or 70.
Is that it? Well,
yeah,
to quote my 2 friends on the bottom quadrants of this podcast here, North Dakota's still going on the road. Mm-hmm. And, I said doubt the Bison at your own peril a few weeks ago. I mean, doubt the Dukes the same way. I mean, we lost to Weber State, maybe we're going to lose to them in September. We didn't lose to Weber State. We had to kick a last-second field goal. What was coming the next week was South Dakota State, Taryn Christian, Jake Weineke, Dallas Goddard. Man, they're just going to run over James Madison. 10 turnovers and a 51-16 win later. We were heading back to Frisco. Oh, here comes Sam Houston in 2016 before we get to this, play NDSU. Here comes Sam Houston. They're pissed off. They should have been the 4 seed. You guys should have been the 5. They were unbeaten. Well, 65-7 later, there was Sam Houston slinking back to Huntsville. So a North Dakota team coming to Harrisonburg, where we've lost once since the end of 2015, and the only coach that did it was the coach that's on our sideline now. Maybe the Dukes win by 60. No, they really don't, but I think that's a close game, but I'd take my chances with my team.
Do you think the style matchup, do you think it's what James Madison wants, where UND is going to use their really talented running backs? They're going to rely on their lines to get pressure. It's almost like you guys are very similar in style. They got a young stud there at freshman quarterback, Tommy Schuster. Would you rather face that type of style that you just feel like you have an edge on? Or, would you rather have a Sam Houston quick offense? I mean, is UND a style that worries you as a Dukes fan?
A little bit, because they can run the ball a little bit, but I trust my run defense. And you saw we just played a freshman quarterback, had thrown 1 interception all year. He threw 3 yesterday because of our pressure, our multiple defenses. Now, we had guys out of position time to time, and that can be worked on. But I'll take our chance. I will take my team's run defense every day. I'll take it. They gave up 117 yards yesterday. 63 were on 1 play. So, all right. That looked like
Eastern's run defense. Oh, it's too easy.
Oh!
Ouch.
For those of you,
generous.
There it goes again.
I was going to say, Matt, your trailer's falling apart.
Look at that. For those of you not on YouTube, 1 square of my linen closet studio just fell down mid-podcast, and it set up that awesome slam, but I'm going to have to use more Gorilla Glue. Tonight's podcast is sponsored by Gorilla Glue. You can pick it up at Fleet Farm and all markets across the United States. No,
this
it's not.
is totally getting pulled off YouTube just because of that advertisement.
Yeah,
This is getting pulled off YouTube. We are screwed. We're getting sued.
Copyright is coming in hot with Gorilla Glue. So
back-to-back copyright infringements.
We got to have fun on the pod. So, yeah, Jamie, to finish your point, I apologize before everything literally fell apart on this end.
That was hysterical, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I trust me, I respect North Dakota's ability to run the ball. Don't get that twisted, but I do trust my front seven, my defensive line to stop the run the same way that we have year after year, except for when it was Trey Lance running the ball. Gotcha.
Good stuff. Kylor, I said we were going to come back to this a little bit. You guys had made some mentions on the NDSU Sam Houston stuff. Dustin Helton says, who wins the NDSU offensive line or Sam Houston's front seven? He's looking forward to his shot. He's referring to a bet that Dustin and I have, where I have bet that Sam Houston will be in the championship game, and he says there's not a chance because their defense won't be able to hold up against teams. So we have a shot bet right now. And Dustin Helton is a Southland guy who is a fan of Stephen F. Austin. So he's not some NDSU fan or anything crazy. Also, Brandon Anderson says, will Sam Houston bounce back against NDSU after letting Monmouth come back and almost win? Chris, actually, sorry, Kylor, I got to start with you, Chris, because you're rocking the T-shirt I bought you in Frisco, which is NDSU gear. Follow me to Frisco Bison. So what do you think, man? NDSU's O-line, Sam's front seven, and does Sam Houston bounce back, or are they on a downward trajectory? What do you think?
I mean, that's just a tough take. NDSU's offensive line, especially after last week, basically enforced their will upon Eastern. You can expect Sam Houston, in my opinion, is kind of just like Eastern is Sam Houston light in the playoffs this year. Maybe but you put a little limey twist in it because you got Barrier and Sam Houston doesn't have Barrier. So I think Sam Houston, you're going to see NDSU kind of got their blueprint. Now, do I think Sam Houston's front seven obviously is better than Eastern's, especially when Eastern was out, Ojo and Graham? I don't think NDSU is going to be able to hand the ball off 40 consecutive times up the gut in this one. And before they made that realization, Eastern was hanging in there with some haymakers. So NDSU's line, I don't think is going to be the problem offensively. I think they're definitely going to do what they want to do. They're going to be able to pass protect and they're going to be able to run protect. I think this game is going to come down more to the other side of the ball for each team. But I'll take NDSU's offensive line for Sam Houston's front seven. That seems like a safe bet.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Kylor, your thoughts on that, my man?
Right now, I think NDSU's front seven is definitely in a rhythm. We saw what they were struggling in the first quarter. Now, I think it was more Eastern completely wore themselves out. I think they played a little bit tougher in the first half than they were probably supposed to. This was a marathon type game, not a sprint, and Eastern Washington sprint in the beginning because by the second half, we looked completely gassed going against NDSU's front seven. I think, maybe the strength coach, maybe the conditioning, we've seen it happen time and time again where Eastern Washington has looked like two different teams in each half. So I think NDSU is one of those front sevens that is going to continue to wear on you. If something is not working, guess what? They're not changing. They're going to continue to do the exact same thing. And, Eric Schmidt is a fantastic quarterback. He doesn't have the scrambling capabilities of Eric Barrier that had in the first half Eric Barrier should have been sacked 200 times in that first half.
Yeah,
but he kept extending plays to have some wild plays to actually keep Eastern Washington in the game. If I had to bet, I would bet on NDSU's front seven just because it's NDSU in the playoffs. Doubt them until they're proven wrong. But yeah, I mean, NDSU's front seven completely wore us out physicaled. And I don't think they'll have the exact same success against, Sam Houston, because Sam Houston, I think overall is a little bit of a better team. I think I said that even last week where I said, I don't think Eastern Washington matches up too well with Sam Houston. I think Sam Houston is a little bit better than Eastern. So I think NDSU will have the same type of or not the same type of success, but still more success than failure.
Yeah, and if I were to peel another piece off my wall here, that would be Eric Barrier escaping from every NDSU defender all the way up until like the fourth quarter. Jeepers, that guy can run. The question for me really with this whole offensive line, defensive line, front seven stuff is, the blueprint is out on NDSU, and it has been for a decade. And what South Dakota State did to NDSU is the exact blueprint to beat them. No different than JMU in 2016. That's the exact game plan. Get up early, out physical them, wear them down, use the run game. I mean, that is it. So can Sam Houston do it? And the question to that on the flip side is, you bet your ass that NDSU is looking at Monmouth's game plan defensively and saying, okay, we can do this with the talent we have on our side of the ball. And they're prepping right now with probably that same style of whatever Monmouth did to slow that Sam Houston offense down. Now, will it work? We'll have to see. So should be interesting. We'll have some predictions here at the end of the podcast to see how you guys feel on that game. Jamie, you are the only one with a home game coming up here as we finish our final big question before we move into some quick hits. Will the 50% capacity limit benefit any teams this weekend, and who will benefit the most from it? So all 4 seeded teams are now able to at least go to 50%. I'm not sure if state rules could still affect it. But what do you think, man? Do you expect a huge crowd for the Dukes, and who has the biggest advantage of the 4 seeded teams?
Well, unfortunately, in Virginia, it is still 30% capacity, so we won't be able to get 12,500 people at our stadium. Unfortunately, it'll be about 8,000. The tough thing is it's the night before exams, so students aren't going to be there for the most part. I would have been there because whatever, I'll go take the exam at 8 a.m. after the football game.
Dedication.
It's Sunday at 6 p.m., so the timing, not great. I hope people come out. We'll see. I don't know how much, of impact that'll have. I assume it's 50% at Huntsville. I mean, Greg Abbott's opened that state. South Dakota State and Brookings, they'll probably still get 20% of their capacity there anyway. So Jacksonville State, though, that might be the one because they'll fill up that stadium. They'll sell it out. They've got a rabid fan base. Now, Delaware's used to playing in front of big crowds. They've got a big stadium that seats over 20,000. They've come to James Madison. So I don't think they're going to be intimidated, but a 50% capacity crowd at Burgess Snow is probably the answer here between those 4 sites.
I'm right with you, Jamie. That's who I thought of. Delaware, who's played in the CAA North and got it kind of an easy first-round game, did not look super hot. And now you've got to go down to hot Alabama, 50% capacity. Though, I mean, they've got the pom-poms and the red, and I think Jacksonville State can bring a big home field advantage. And I think those Gamecocks, they really believe in this team that's played well together from the fall all the way to the spring. Chris, what do you think, man? You think the Gamecocks have the biggest home field advantage, or is there another squad out there?
Yeah, probably, but I still think at 50% capacity, like fans aren't really ever going to be that big of an impact. I mean, you view it as like in a regular season, if you got 50% people at your game, the people going are probably your rabid fans anyway, so they're ones that are loud and cheering. They're never considered tough environments to play in, like Idaho. Yeah, we can sell 16,000, but we're averaging like 8. So like it's a normal, capacity for us. It's not loud or intimidating or anybody to come to the Kibbe Dome. So I think when you're not shoulder to shoulder and it's all that noise on top of you, a team like a North Dakota though, or North Dakota State and North Dakota, if they were hosting, having domes that can kind of artificially make it still feel louder because the noise is more trapped, it would, but it's outside all of them this week. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be any home field advantage in terms of capacity. But I think you guys touched on it a little bit. Weather, I'm not a big believer in weather affecting games, but maybe the CAA, like, I don't know. I think for the most part this year, other than the fact that one team actually has to travel and go through the logistics of travel, there's no real home field advantage at all in the FCS this year.
Yeah, and I hope I don't jinx it, but we talk about the home field advantage. We talk about 50%. We talk about travel and these other things. COVID testing, man. I mean, I hope I don't jinx it, but we're doing well so far. But if one team decides to, there you go, knock on wood.
Why'd you do that?
If you get a positive or something, thankfully we have till Sunday. We could see maybe just like the hockey tournaments UND's involved in for the hockey and all that. They had teams like Michigan legitimately they were done because somebody had a COVID positive. So hopefully the teams are doing what they need to do to avoid that situation.
Yeah. VCU and March Madness.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's avoid all that because that's I think this season is far from anything remotely close to an asterisk, and we don't want to see anything give that crowd any more energy. So, guys, let's move into some quick hit questions here. These are some really fun ones. This might be the best batch we've had all spring season, and we're going to start with Joshua Hoffman. What is the must-watch game of the week? Kylor, my man, which one are you going to be zoning in on as we move into these teams trying to make it to the semifinals?
Well, I kind of said, last week, who was it? Victor, who said, do you want to watch NDSU at Sam Houston or would you rather watch Eastern at Sam Houston? Of course, I was like, I don't want to ever travel to an NDSU game if I don't have to, unless it's in Frisco. I work every Saturday. The games are not on Saturday. Sam Houston fans, if you want an Eastern Washington fan to hang out with you guys, drink with you guys, cheer for Sam Houston State, hook me up with a ticket and I am willing to go because I'll hang out with you guys. It's on Sunday. I don't work Sunday. So yeah, I'm more interested in watching the game that, I may actually go to. Other than that, I have the most interest in Jacksonville State, Delaware, because I think it is, the best matchup or most intriguing matchup. But yeah, right now, Sam Houston State, NDSU. If a Sam Houston State wants to hook me up with a ticket, I'll come along.
I want to revert my previous answer then. If Kylor's at Sam Houston State, they have the biggest home field advantage.
Oh, dang. The Shot King heading down to Power Stadium.
In the Eagles Power Hour, he talks about how he's a dum-dum for being shirtless in 12-degree weather at an Eastern Washington football game.
Yep.
Can you imagine Kylor and Neal shirtless at Sam Houston?
That's on Google.
This is a different version of Kylor that the shirt always stays on now. This Kylor looks like he ate college Kylor. So we will decide no one ever has to see that.
Yeah, I think for me, you're going to get 3 really good games in North Dakota, James Madison, Delaware, Jacksonville State, and NDSU Sam Houston, which means, of course, those games will be blowouts, and you got to tune in to South Dakota State versus Southern Illinois.
Amazing. Hey, it'll be interesting to see how they play out. I'm personally just real quick intrigued by UND JMU because is it going to be like a Weber JMU where it's actually a good game like everyone keeps talking about, at least up in this neck of the woods, or is it actually going to be JMU just pounding UND, which has been bad on the road? So bad on the road UND or JMU business as usual?
And really, there's only 2 games that conflict with each other. Otherwise, every other game you can just flow through all day. It's that JSU Delaware and NDSU Sam Houston game that's on at the same time. That's kind of where you've got to choose between those 2. But otherwise, man, sit down and enjoy a nice Sunday evening. Yeah.
Nice.
See, you already have the U. Now you just need to find S and H.
That's on Google. You can.
That's
it's
solid.
that easy. It's
Gosh,
that
guy had a little bit to drink. I haven't even seen that photo before.
Look at those glossed over eyes.
And he recycles right there. That's where all the bottles and cans went. If you're not watching on YouTube, we have Kylor from Google in 2010 semifinals. Well, 20-degree weather there, Kylor, for you?
I think it was like 20 at kickoff, but with wind chill. I think like by the time the game or that photo was taken, it was probably closer to the single digits for sure.
Well, phenomenal. You look great there, buddy. Now you got the beard. I think you're better looking now.
That's well done. I just painted the face. I didn't go that far. I looked like this in college too. Eventually, so we weren't
planning on it, and then a bottle of Jack pops in, and you're like, "Hey, look at what we could do!"
Yeah, buddy.
Multiple chest paints in college, but once again, 72 and sunny at every game. Little easier to do that.
When you get a small little bird chest like myself, the paint just falls off. So, guys, Scott Moody wants to know who had the most convincing win and who had the most surprising win. I guess I'd love to answer this one. For me, the most convincing win on my end was South Dakota State. And it's weird that it's against a clearly inferior opponent, but that's what you're supposed to do. So that's my weird twist take. South Dakota State beats their opponent, 30 to whatever. And that's exactly what the number 1 seed is supposed to do. Handle business, move forward, no other questions asked. How about most surprising win? Anyone have one out there?
Yeah.
What do you got, Kylor?
So for most convincing win, I'll just say NDSU. That was impressive. For most surprising, I'm actually going to say UND just because I don't think Missouri State is that good. But I thought the month off would make UND be a little rusty, but UND proved Missouri State is just not good enough to be in the playoffs. But yeah, I really thought the rust for UND would actually be a little more apparent, but it really wasn't. UND took care of business.
Good stuff. Hey, Jason Easton wants to know, Eston, I think is the last name. I apologize. I butcher last names all the time in the pod. It's kind of a tradition. If NDSU and UND both win their games, where will the semifinal be held, Fargo or Grand Forks? Jason, that would be based off the bidding process. About 4 weeks ago, just like every other year, at-large teams have to submit bids, which is just straight cash you give to the NCAA to host a football game. And it will depend on who gave more money, NDSU or UND. I can almost guarantee it was NDSU, who used to basically buy their way into the field in Division II, weird era way back in the day. NDSU gives a lot of money for that bidding process. Even though it's not disclosed, I'd be shocked to see UND fork up more cash than NDSU because they take into account ticket revenue and stuff like that.
They got that Frozen Four money, though.
Yeah, it just goes right back to the hockey team, you know. All right, guys. Hall Jones, awesome James Madison fan, wants to know which home team will have the biggest boost from the NCAA increasing attendance limits. I think we kind of discussed at least an advantage, but in terms of actual numbers, what do you think there, Jamie? Is it JSU still, or do you think other teams will bring? You think Brookings will sell the house? How do you feel about it?
No, I think it's probably JSU. They got a great fan base down there. I know, they take a lot of crap for how they performed in the playoffs, but they've got a great fan base, notwithstanding. I guess we can say Braden Owens is a part of that great fan base. It's a great fan, But Bob, Bruce, you guys got a great fan base. You really do. I would love to have a home and home with Jacksonville State. Just
They
for that reason.
They won't come back.
I was gonna do.
It'll just be away.
They got to come to us first.
Oh, Kylor stole it. Yeah, that's the thing, man. You got to make them come to you first. So then, you did it wrong. You went there first, and then they backed out. So, yeah. Sorry, Jacksonville State.
So isn't Texas like at 100% capacity as sporting events, though? I mean, I know that the NCAA is still only allowing 50, but so I don't know where Alabama is on. I mean, I assume it's closer to Texas in terms of allowing attendance, but you know what they say about assuming. So I guess with me not knowing what local authorities in Alabama are thinking, I think Sam Houston State, because they could probably actually get all 50, but I don't know as well. Is their fan base really one that would be getting up for this?
It'll be interesting. They brought about 8,000 to Frisco because they were right down the road. I mean, for the championship. But looking at tickets, my brother who lives down in the Houston area, Kylor, if you go to the game, hit him up. Ryan, he looked into tickets and he got them no problem. Sam Houston's got quite a few still on sale. South Dakota would be a pick for me because their state is super lax on the COVID stuff. But the thing is something only North Dakotans would think about. It's planting season. Farmers are in the field, man. So, honestly, that will be a factor for maybe families and other things that aren't going to actually go attend that game. So, I think Jamie's on to something with JSU.
Yeah, and I think if you just look at JSU, for one, if 50% of their stadium is probably going to be more than anyone else can even have, because like Jamie said earlier, JMU's only allowing 8,000 fans. If they sell out, that's totally fine. But Jacksonville State is probably going to have 12,000 fans in their stadium or whatever their, attendance is. What is their facility? 24, 22, something around there?
Somewhere in the range, yeah.
Yeah, they'll have over 10,000 fans, and half of South Dakota State can't do that, even if they sell out. Half of Sam Houston can't do that if they sell out.
Absolutely. Guys, in terms of sellouts and numbers and those things, Scott Moody, Joshua Hoffman, Brian Thompson all had a combination of questions about the ESPN primetime games and what it means for programs in the FCS. ESPN with some genius marketing thinking, hey, the NFL draft just happened. Everyone's going to be like, come on, I want to watch football right now. So they move all the FCS games to Sunday. ESPN2 should be pretty exciting. What do you think that does for a program, guys? I know that's been a big advantage for NDSU. In terms of exposure, Chris, your team previously in the FBS, now back at the FCS level, what kind of exposure can that do for a program?
Hold on, I need more salt in my wound.
Yeah. Hey, we love having you back.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little shocked on – I'm very curious on what the Nielsen ratings are going to be for these. I don't think these games are going to pull well. I mean – for us, right, the FCS Fans Nation community, the people that are on the page, people on Twitter, will be watching, but we've been watching. Most people I talk to still out in the general public, even though in a state that has 2 FCS programs in Idaho and Idaho State, it has a rich history because Boise State used to be in it as well. People aren't even aware that football is happening. And I think unless ESPN does a fantastic job plugging that on their draft coverage, but then it's the same thing you get with day 7 of the draft. Like, who's still watching at round 7? Not a lot of people. Yeah, some people, not a lot of people. And then so it's just like, are people going to get their football fix from the round 1, round 2, round 3, all the way to round 7? And then are they going to want to wake up on a Sunday and, try to track down these games? Because I think that's the problem we're going with, is that we're going to get so much more coverage narrative that people like David Pollock pushed. It's not been true. There's been a little bit more, but ESPN hasn't really been advertising it. I watched a bunch of MLS this weekend. They weren't plugging any of these games next week. And that was on ESPN and ESPN Plus. So they're not even promoting them. I would expect that to change as this week rolls out. Probably watch some NBA on Wednesday or whatever day ESPN has it, and maybe they start pushing it in baseball, but I haven't seen any advertising for it. Most people probably expect it to be the same general Sunday coverage where it's like softball and lacrosse and baseball and these sports that people just don't really want to watch, college sports that people don't want to watch on TV. So I'll be curious to see how it draws, but it's good for us for sure.
I think that had they put the games on ESPN and promoted it, like, hey, some of these guys might get drafted next year, or maybe, or more specifically, if Trey Lance and Dylan Radins were playing this weekend and then getting drafted next weekend, that might draw some eyeballs and Kay Johnson. But with it being after the draft, there might be football fatigue. That, like Chris said, the diehards that are watching us will be all over it. I don't know why people would watch us, but we're pretty engaging. So,
And actually, some people know this, but I'm a big lacrosse guy, and there's this. I think we should all promote this. They launched a professional lacrosse league, the PLL, 2 years ago, and one of the things that Paul Rabel, the founder, did was he challenged everybody with a hashtag, like, get PLL on TV. Like, we should do hashtag FCS on TV, and the goal was you should go to a sports bar, a restaurant, your country club, wherever where there's public, and ask them to turn on those games, and that way you can draw people's eyes. Let's guerrilla tactic that. We just came up with it on the podcast, making moves, the inner marketing major in me. Everybody should be challenged to go out and get these games on a public TV so people are aware that they're playing, because it's only going to help for the semifinals and final.
Hey, if anyone's going to pull it off, it's this podcast and our page, which we created the Big Three, and I have said it before on this podcast. Find the pundit before us who started talking about Big Three. We created it. That's our narrative. Check mark. That one goes to us. Final quick hit question, guys, here. This one's great. Joe Gass, a Delaware fan. Good luck to your Blue Hens here, Joe. With the Battle of the Chickens coming this weekend, how do you like your wings? Oh, phenomenal. I'm a big fan of dry rub there, Joe. Anything dry rub, and I'm a complete wuss. So on a Buffalo Wild Wings scale, once you get into a little mid-tier yellow, I got to wipe the forehead. I'm sweating. I'm crying like a baby. So mild and dry rubbed, my man. Boring as heck. Jamie, how do you like your chicken wings?
In my belly.
Yeah.
Just about anyway. I don't like them breaded and fried, fried without breading. But give me some hot sauce, Buffalo Wild Wings hot, spicy garlic, mango habanero, Carolina Reaper blaze. I don't care. I'll eat them. I love wings. My favorite damn food. I could eat them every day.
Oh, they're the best. Kylor, I can see you just saying ghost pepper or something. How do you like wings, man?
No, man. My favorite wings are still like any type of Asian zing. So any type of like sweet sriracha, anything like that. Those are always my favorite go-to, but I like it all. If you are ever in Arizona and go to Santan Brewery, their habanero pineapple wings are pretty delicious. They're not too spicy. They're a little sweet and spicy, like my favorite type of styles, but they're really good.
Chris, before I get the munchies and have to go eat some wings, final man, what do you think about having them? How do you make them up?
Carrots.
Chris, do you have a preference on chicken wings?
What? I like just regular old Buffalo wings, but big wings fan. So
Chris there, he wasn't paying attention because we were putting out so many delicious thoughts into his
you guys
mind.
froze.
He was spacing out in terms of the chicken wings.
I was like really confused. All three of you guys froze right as I was about to give my take. And then I thought I was gone. And then you guys were randomly talking again. Dang internet. Bobby Houck's trying to silence me again.
Internet's slow and the podcast rooms are falling apart. We're dragging our way to a finale here, boys. All right, guys, that concludes all the questions we had. Thanks to all the fans for throwing those out there. If you want to add questions to this podcast, join our FCS Fans Nation Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun jazz. It's good stuff. And we will have updates on our playoff bracket challenge, which the winner will receive a team hat of their choice coming up earlier this week. All right, guys, it's time to get into some predictions. We've got 4 games on the slate, 8 teams remaining. Let's get into it. Mr. Bruce Edmiston, an awesome Jacksonville State fan, is going to lead us in with this. His little question/shade is, will the Blue Hens lay an egg when they visit the Gamecocks? The Gamecocks roost, he says. So, all right, boys, let's get into some predictions. And let's start with the Valley matchup, which will guarantee a Missouri Valley team into the semifinals. Jamie, I'm going to give you South Dakota State and Southern Illinois. What do you think, my man? Score and prediction.
Well, it's not going to be 44-3 like it was a few weeks ago, but it will be the same victor. South Dakota State, 31-20.
31-20, closer. I was intrigued to see what you would say because I feel like this game will be like NDSU boat racing Illinois State last year in the regular season by like 30, and then Illinois State coming back and that game being really close. So I'm going to see which way it'll go this time around. So, all right, Kylor, moving on down to that side of the bracket as well. This is a good one. Delaware traveling to Jacksonville State. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think I like the Gamecocks in this game. Prior to the bracket, I probably wouldn't have said that, but I think JSU beats Delaware. I think they're on a roll.
And I think that they are built around stopping the run. I think that Delaware is going to want to run the ball, and I don't know if they're going to have that success. And something underrated for Jacksonville State, the only team that has played this much together with a consistent coaching staff fall to spring. This is game, 12 for them or something? That has to be worth money, especially at home.
This is probably the best defense Jacksonville State's going to see too, though. So look for them to force some turnovers.
That's true. It's going to be fun. We'll see if Jacksonville State gets their first win over the CAA, Missouri Valley, or Big Sky in the playoffs. Chris Hammond, what do you think, man? Sam Houston hosting North Dakota State. What do you got, buddy?
Oh, man. Well, speaking of, I said, and I quoted and owned it, that I thought Eastern was going to curb stomp NDSU. And I also called Eastern Washington Sam Houston light this year. I feel like I like the Bearcats on this one. So congratulations to Bison Nation on your advancement to the FCS semifinals.
And I will say one thing about that game. Nothing at all against Sam Houston, but I'm rooting for the Bison because I want the home game in the semis.
Yeah, I can see how Duke fans are like, yeah, it's time for you to step onto our turf, and we'll see how that game plays.
But you got to view it, too. If you do play Sam Houston in the semis, you got that Texas weather under you, so then that's not a conversation when you play in Frisco.
That's right.
You just make the drive on up. Just
That's
say, we're
right.
staying all week. We're on vacation.
Honestly, they might stay, you know? Why go back home?
Right?
If you can find a practice facility, if James Madison goes to Sam Houston and they win, why wouldn't you just stay down there for a week?
Yeah.
That'll be
Hang out
interesting.
with TCU. Just do like go practice over at Texas A&M for a bit and hang out with Jimbo and pick that big football brain on some things.
There you go.
Practice at any of the Texas stadiums, even high school. It's going to look very Frisco-like.
Yeah. 100%.
Go to Allen. I mean, that's very Frisco-like anyway.
No doubt, no doubt. James Madison and UND guys for the finale. I'm not sold that UND becomes some superior road team in Bridgeforth, which they have not lost a game, like Jamie said, in that stadium, besides to Kurt Signetti, who's now the coach. I think I'm right on that. Since 2015. So I'm not convinced any of those streaks get broken. It's going to be a battle of the lines. And I think an early win against SDSU in a brand new, fresh, random spring season doesn't justify UND traveling on the road and upsetting the Dukes. It'll make it a little intriguing. We'll go James Madison 27, UND 16. So 27-16, give James Madison the victory, advancing to the semifinal. All right, gentlemen, that concludes our podcast. We're getting this one out a little early for all the fans. We hope you guys have enjoyed these all year. The quarterfinals are coming up, and it's time to see who makes it to the elite Final Four. Ooh, that was terrible. Not elite, just the Final Four. All right, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Jamie, Kylor, Chris, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see what happens after the quarters, gentlemen.
Boom.
Boom.
I did 5 hours of yard work. Screw that.
I did 3.
Oh,
I did like 3 minutes. I just watered.
solid.